Welcome to episode 2 of the Breaking Into Athletic Performance podcast. I'm Christian Chofi, and I'm here with Ryan Smack once again. And today our guest is Chase Whitehead, and we're going to just have him go ahead and give us some details about his background, where he comes from, and what he does now. Chase?
For sure. So my background, I'm from Florida, and I'm from Destin, Florida in the Panhandle. And so that's where I grew up. I went to college to play football at the University of South Florida in Tampa. So I was there in Tampa for 2 years and played football there. I played slot receiver and then transferred and played my last 2 seasons at Southern Miss in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. So that football career kind of, led me into the career path that I'm on today with performance. But it kind of was a wild roller coaster because I came in as a walk on and was really a nobody, little wide receiver, little crafty guy, tough guy, and kind of just tried to make my way, and eventually ended up achieving a lot of my goals and dreams of trying to compete at the Division I level. So, and now today I'm working with the Army. So we do mental resilience training and performance training here at Fort Gordon in Augusta, Georgia. And pretty much what we do is we try to provide our soldiers with mental skills to be able to use in their MOS or their military specialty. And it's all about trying to fit it to that population. So, obviously with it, whether it be sport, whether it be healthcare, whether it be the military, it's all very similar mental skills that we're trying to teach people to help them excel at whatever it is, that they're trying to accomplish. So that's pretty much, sort of a quick overview of what I do. Mental skills training, kind of the realm of sports psychology, if you want to think of it that way, and trying to help people excel at their mental performance.
Yeah, so Chase and I, we did our master's together at Ithaca College, and the way that program's set up is there's sort of like 3 programs. There's ex-phys and there's sports psych, and then there's a hybrid model, which is human performance. That's what I did. And Chase is in the sports psych program, and in my opinion, is a really good program. I got a lot out of it, especially on the ex-phys side because I took more classes on that side. So it's good to have Chase on here with the knowledge, more so on the other side. So what we're going to talk about today is mostly some sports psych stuff. So let's talk about, as a strength coach or even as a sport coach, when you are walking into the weight room or meeting your team for the first time, what are some big things that you do to lay the groundwork for a good team culture? And then how do you continue that within the first couple months of your employment at this whatever institution you're at?
Right. I mean, I think the first thing, pretty well that I did a lot of work when I was at Ithaca with athletes and leadership. And I think that is really sort of the foundation when it comes to influencing a team culture. So I guess before I talk about that, I would talk about being clear about what your standards are, what your expectations of your players are. I know that I've had a lot of coaches in the past. Y'all have had a lot of coaches in the past where they come in one day and they're like, this is what we're going to do. Like, this is the thing. We're going to do this all the time. And then literally a week later, you never do that thing again. Like, you thought this is what we're here for. This is what we're about. So having a clear standard and expectation for this is this is what I want to see, and this is what I expect to see. And if this is not what we're getting, then this is going to be the consequence. Or, I think that a lot of times we kind of get, when it comes to team culture, we try to morph, and obviously you have to work with the players that you have, because you have different personalities. The same thing that you use with one group is not going to work with another group. But with that being said, being clear about what you value, what your standards are, and what your expectations are of those standards. But like I said, then from there, I feel like it's all leadership, and it's knowing that you have a very minimal amount of time as a coach. You don't have very much time that you really get to spend trying to impact your athletes, and the decisions that they're making, and the way that they influence the rest of their team. So you want to spend that time with the people that have the most influence on your team. So it's going to be really hard. So like, for example, when I use this example whenever I talk about influencing team culture, because it was just something I was at an Ithaca football game actually, and the whole crowd was like really just laid back, and I could remember the whole first half. There was this one lady, and she was just screaming like defense, defense, like trying to get a defense chant going, and the whole crowd was just not having it. And in the third quarter, this group of 5 guys comes up and sits right behind me, and they start literally doing these same exact chant that this one lady had been doing, but it was 4 of them, and the people that were right in front of me started to buy in, because like they had a relationship with them, they knew them, and all of a sudden, like before you knew it, like it just started to grow. Like these 4 people went to 5, went to 6, and then like it just went throughout that whole, like all the stands just started screaming this defense chant. And I was just like, that is cultural influence at its basic form. It's very, very difficult as a coach to sit there and you want to scream out like, this is what we need to do, like that, and you want to get people behind you. But if you have a small group of people that you can get to buy into that, they will do the work. Like those people will change the culture of your team. You're not going to be able to do it by yourself. And so that's the biggest thing that I think, starting off as a coach with clear expectations of what it is that you want, what kind of team you're trying to develop, what kind of culture you want, and then getting a small group of people to buy into that have influence for the rest of the team.
Yeah, that was a really good example. I just want to touch on a couple things you alluded to. So when you talk about getting that vision and whatnot out there, I think it's really important to get that on paper and have it written out exactly how you want it before you even get to the state that you have this job in. I think that's really important, is knowing what you want to see. But then also, you talked about developing some leaders, but you have to have those leadership qualities yourself before you walk in the room too. So you have to figure out what those are to you, and how you can develop yourself. And I mean, if you are a good leader, you don't have to do a whole lot of the intentional leadership. A lot of it comes. So I think that was a really good point. Another thing I wanted to ask you about is, how do you create that culture when you're like an assistant or a GA or something, and there's already a culture there, but how do you branch out and create your own culture in an environment like that?
Well, you have to know what your team values. Like you have to know at the core, if that's an organization that values the same things that you do. Because if you don't, then it's going to be, you're not going to stay there long, or you're not going to be very happy there. You have to, and that doesn't mean that you're going to like everybody and that you're going to have a great relationship with everybody and all that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people that value the same things that you do. People that, they value hard work, or they value respect, or they value teamwork and camaraderie, or is it a team that values status and more of, not, I guess, not money in the sense that because this is collegiate, but more of, if you think of it from the corporate America perspective, some people, they want to be a part of an organization because they want to be out there and they want to make as much money as possible. And that's fine if that's what you value. Then if you're a part of that organization, that's great for you. But if that's not what you value, you're not going to be happy there. If you value respecting people, and that's why you do what you do, then you're going to have a hard time in that culture. So I think the first thing is looking at, what does this organization, or what does this athletic department, like, at its core, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to accomplish? And are you bought into that? And from there, it's, doing it by example. I mean, it just comes back to what you said, from what you just mentioned with, as being a coach, as a lot of that stuff comes naturally when you lead yourself. Like when you're already doing those things, you're already, putting in hard work. You're already showing up early. You're already leaving late. You're already being encouraging to your fellow coaches. Like those types of things, they change the culture themselves when you just show up and present yourself in that way.
Yeah, that's a good point. Something I was going to say was, sorry, I went blank for a second. So you alluded to that, some, like, what people value, what organizations value, like hard work, respect, that kind of stuff. I think a lot of people take it for granted and think like, oh, this is collegiate athletics. Every department values this here. Like, people, before they get into a job, they think that everyone in the organization is going to value the same things because it's sports, but that's not necessarily true. Like at the Division I level, it's completely different. Some, like, athletes will value scholarships, and that's why they're playing. At the Division III level, they might just enjoy the camaraderie, and the coaches get that. So I think it's really important to lay those values out for yourself. And I know it's tough in athletics because there's so few jobs, but you really do have to pick an organization that aligns with you well.
Mm-hmm. Before I jump into that one, I just wanted to see Ryan, because I saw you shaking your head, nodding your head. What do you think about that topic? And
so I agree with what you guys are saying, where you need to make sure that you're surrounded by people that you're on the same page with, in regards to what your goals and your values and your mission is, and kind of where you want things to go. And to kind of go along with that, like within an organization, you guys all might be able to get onto the same page. And that's probably why a lot of the people are hired within that organization, is because they hire people that they know share those values. But something that, like, I've experienced, and I'm sure both of you have too, is once you get there, there might be athletes that are already there that kind of clash with the new values that you're instilling. So I'd be interested to hear, like, what are some strategies that you think would be helpful to kind of bring athletes, or just other leftover people, for a lack of a better term, onto the same page as you and whoever else that are trying to, like, instill your new values in whatever organization or situation you're in.
Mm-hmm. A lot of times, I think that as coaches, you think that you want to bring people in and change them to fit what you're doing, which is a good mindset to have because you want people to fit your culture. You want, like, when you get a new player in or you get a new group in, like, that new freshman class is not going to be your culture. Your culture is going to be the seniors, juniors, sophomores, and they're going to come fit your culture. So with that being said, though, you don't really, everybody is different, and every athlete, like you said, Christian, is going to have different motivations. I mean, I had a lot of teammates who they didn't care about anything other than getting their check and sending it back to their family, to take care of their brothers and sisters who weren't eating, like, or their dream is just the NFL. Like, I don't even care. I just need to make it to the league, or whatever professional, like, next level that there is out there for them. And then you have some people that they just, like, it's that status thing. Like, I just want to be on the team. I want to have, like, I want people to know that I'm an athlete and that I represent this team and all that kind of stuff. What it comes down to as a coach is knowing what your players value, like knowing what they value and providing them with some of that. And always reminding them why they're doing what they're doing. Because I think that's even in the littlest things, like even in a little exercise, like, hey, for this we're strictly working on, making sure that we keep our knee structure strong so that we don't tear our ACL, or we're working on hamstrings, or we're working on shoulder flexibility, or like letting people know what they're doing and what the purpose that they're doing it for, and trying to tie it back into why your athletes are there.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm going to talk to, Christian about what he's doing in a different way than I'm going to talk to you, Ryan, because y'all value different things. So that's going to come out in the way that I'm reminding you, this is why you're doing this. Like, obviously, when it goes to the little things like exercises, like, yeah, like, this is why we're doing the hamstring curl. I get that. It's not really the same, but continually reminding them, why are they doing this? And with the knowledge of why they are there is going to make your athletes want to be there and want to perform. The other thing that I wanted to add when you were talking about just bringing people together that are different, like much different, is, so Christian, I had given you one of the old exercises that my strength coach used back when I was in college, and really just putting your athletes in situations where it doesn't have to be something that you're overtraining them and you're consistently, pushing them, but there are things that they can be mentally taxed. Like, the exercise that I showed you, Christian, like, it's just, you do push-ups, like you do a push-up, then you roll over and you do a sit-up, and then you roll over and you do 2 push-ups, you roll over, you do 2 sit-ups. Well, but if you don't do it exactly the way I say it, exactly the time that I say it, the direction that I tell you to roll, and if you're not all moving at the same time, then we're going to keep going and we're going to start over. Like, little things like that put athletes in a very frustrated position, and they're all experiencing that emotion together. As cultures experience emotions together, as teams experience emotions together, they develop a cultural identity. They start to move like each other. They start to talk like each other. And so little things, I mean, the smallest things, like, I know this seems silly, but watching a movie together, Have you ever wondered why you sit there and you watch a movie with somebody and you get done and you haven't talked the whole time, but you're like, wow, like we had a good time. It's like we didn't even interact, but we feel good about each other. It's because you all just watched the same thing and felt the same emotions and you went through that together. There's almost nothing that will bring people together like that emotion that they experience when they go through something difficult. When they experience that adversity, like, you know, they're on sprint number 28 or whatever it may be, but you don't have to always, it doesn't have to always be something that is super, you know, overtraining or whatever is my whole point. It can be things that are very simple. Holding a squat, holding a lunge, you know what I mean? Just holding a lunge position and everybody's got to hold it until, you know, you say stop. And if they don't do it exactly that way, you can get creative with the way that you do it. You get what I'm saying though. You put people in positions where they have to work together and they go through an adverse moment and they experience emotion together and then they have to work through that, and it brings that kind of strips away all the BS and gun smoke that doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
All right, I want to come back to this because there's a big like controversy with that kind of tool in strength conditioning right now. But I just go back and really hammer out a couple things that you talked about briefly. But so we go back to Ryan's initial question, which was like getting people to conform to the culture that you want to set, right? So I think that it's important to note that there's a really big spectrum of conforming to the overall culture that the coaches are trying to set. And there are definitely people on the very far end that will never get up and be a contributor to the culture. And there are people that absolutely should be cut, like dead weight needs to be cut. But then there's also people that are in the middle that need a good bit of pushing. And then there's people closer to the like conforming to the cultures as it is, and you don't need to do a whole lot, and those are probably the people that are going to be your leaders, and there's like a bunch of different types of leadership that we can talk about later. But I think that people are really afraid to cut athletes these days, and obviously as strength coaches we don't have that opportunity. But it's like, speaking from a sport coach's perspective, there's no reason to keep someone on the team that's an amazing player if they're hurting your culture. And like I see that so often, that there's star players, they hurt the culture, but they still get whatever they want. And I mean, that's like one type of culture that may work for a season or two, but that's not a sustainable culture. So that's something you need to think about. Obviously this is intended for strength coaches, but I think sport coaches can get a lot out of it too if you're coming into the field. And then on that same note would just be knowing what motivates your team. So Chase, like jump in whenever, but some things that I know about are like internal motivations, which are recognition or I don't know, recognition. And what are some other things, Chase? That's the only one that comes to my mind right now. I'll jump in when I think of it.
I mean, I think you hit on a good point though when it comes to like, you're dealing with this group. You got your leaders, your people that are killing it and they're pushing and holding your culture there and moving it forward. And then you've got your people that are in the middle, just kind of retaining, and they're, you know, some days this group might be a little bit more towards pulling the opposite direction. Sometimes it might be a little bit more.
Yeah, they can go either way.
Right. And then this last group is a group that you're really trying to get rid of, that you don't really, you know, that's not your decision as a strength coach, but this group is.
They just don't get it.
But the thing that you want to focus on as a strength coach is highlighting these people, highlighting your leaders, making sure to and I don't mean it in a way that you know, like always flaunting them or anything, but highlight when they do something well. Highlight when they do something well, and empower those people in the middle, empower that middle group. And the thing is, a lot of times athletes have a lot more going on than just the sport. You know what I mean? They've got their family at home who's giving them problems. They got their significant other who they're not going to even think about in a year, but it's just killing them. And they've got their school, and they've got, they don't like this kind of, the food that's at the dining hall, and they don't, there's a million other things that are going on in their life. And sometimes it's just like a little bit, it's just that little, like, confidence boost, or just that little thing that's going to tip them over the edge and get them moving in a positive direction, because how big momentum is. I mean, one thing goes good during my day, like somebody pays for your coffee, and then you show up at work and somebody that, doesn't normally say hey to you pats you on the back or something. You're like, oh shit. I'm going to have a great day. And it's like, dude, just two random little things. You got, like, what? Like, all of a sudden you think you're walking on water. Like, you're not, but you feel like it. Those are the little things that you want your athletes right there in the middle to have. Like, you want things to start going well for them, momentum to start picking up, and then they start shifting into that category that's leading your culture and pulling your culture in the direction that you want to go.
Yeah, I think so I kind of remembered what I was trying to say earlier, but like recognition and appreciation, I found that those are two of the biggest tools that you can use for those people in the middle. And I've found personally that the more extroverted athletes, they get more motivated by the recognition, and the more introverted athletes, they like the appreciation. So, I mean, the way I deal that out would be recognition would just be, it's really the same thing you're going to say to appreciate someone, just appreciation is to them directly, and then recognition would be like in front of the team or something. I just had to get that little aspect out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ryan, what's your take on motivating and building the confidence of that middle group, that you really want to lead your culture and build your culture in the direction that you're looking for?
Yeah, along the lines of what you guys are saying, I think there's a lot to be said about like setting people up for success. So if you challenge them with difficult things that they're kind of makes that middle group question, can I even do this? Why do I keep doing this? I don't know if I want to keep coming in here at 6 a.m. and listen to this guy yell at me to run faster, right? But then all of a sudden they see that kind of top tier group do it, and they're getting praised, and they might think, okay, I want to be in that group. And then over time, like if you're programming in a smart way, people are going to get better at doing things. And eventually they're going to be able to kind of see some sort of tangible difference in their ability to do things that they think are difficult. So it might be testing them before and after, or just kind of showing them like, hey, this is where you were 3 weeks ago. Now you're here. Look at that. And like Christian said, you either pull them aside individually, or kind of recognize individuals in front of the team that are in that middle group. So then people start seeing like, okay, I might not like doing this stuff, but when I do it and I improve, it feels good. So if you kind of tailor things in a way that are going to help people see results that are realistic and tangible and achievable, I think that goes a long way towards getting that middle group kind of where you want them, because most people like being good at things. Most people like getting better at things. And if you're able to set that up in a way that they're able to recognize it and realize that things are going their way, like you said, I think it goes a long way towards making them kind of believe in the process and kind of get on that train of trying to be on that top tier of people that do things the right way because they recognize the value in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that. I really like that because and taking that from a mental performance perspective, whenever you interact with players as a coach, the only way that you're going to know this player is a recognition motivated athlete. This player is an appreciation motivated athlete. This athlete only shows up because they love camaraderie and they want to be a part of a team. This athlete only shows up because they want to bolster their status. This athlete wants to be there because they want to compete at anything, everything. It doesn't matter whether it's ping pong, like how far can we throw our shoe, like they want to win. The only way that you're going to know that is by listening. And I think that is one of the key things that obviously that I do in my job, but I think that we could do more of in the strength and conditioning world is you're constantly, because you are the leader, you are running the show, you're telling them what to do, when to do it, and how to do it properly. But taking some time, like when you have the time to just stand there and be like, hey, like what's going on? Like, and just, what's going on in your day? Like what's going on today? And if you know things about them, know your players, know what they're trying to accomplish, know their girlfriend, know what's going on in their life. And that's going to help you figure out what motivates them. Like little conversations, like a 1 minute, 2 minute conversation can start to lead you to think this athlete, they're an appreciation person. Like they love appreciation. If I give them appreciation, they're going to want to keep coming back in here. And so just taking that little bit of time, like the 2 minutes before, when they're stretching and you just walk over and see what's going on. Like, are you listening or are you just fooling around as a coach? You know what I mean? It's little time that if you pay attention that you can really learn something.
Yeah, I think we get into it a lot I don't know about myself personally, but a lot of coaches might see, especially strength coaches, that are really into the science, and I certainly am. And sometimes you get into this habit of looking at your Excel sheet and seeing every single person as a number on your sheet, and how do you get these numbers to go up or down? And I've definitely fallen into that trap before, but I think one of the biggest things is just treating your athletes as people. And it sounds so ridiculous and so obvious, but a lot of the times, like, you can fall into the trap of just seeing those numbers on the sheet, and then they're only in there with you for an hour. So it's tough. It's really tough to develop relationships as a strength coach. And I think we do get a bad rap for that. And the sports med team usually gets the credibility for developing relationships with athletes. And I think that's a great thing, but we could definitely all do a better job of it in general.
Yeah, agreed.
Ryan, without being too revealing, what are some challenges you're facing right now as a GA in terms of not necessarily problem athletes, because we kind of touched on that, but so you're a GA and you have a head strength coach above you, and then you have some sport coaches that unfortunately sometimes have too much input into what we're doing. So, like, what are some challenges you're facing right now? Because I know, like, at any stage in the game, you're going to have challenges, but specifically yours are ones that'll be really good for up-and-coming coaches.
Yeah, so things I've both experienced and seen other people experience in my position, they mainly revolve around, like, so when you're a GA, you get into a school, and every year and a half or 2 years, your position is rotated between different people, right? So you get into a situation where you take over a team with a coach who might have really, really liked the way that some other person did it, and then they want you to be the new version of that person, even though that's not you. And that's not just for GAs. Like, anytime someone takes over a program, they're stepping into someone else's shoes until they build their own identity there. And then, like you already touched on, there's sport coaches who kind of know a little too much for their own good, to where they know enough so they think that they can kind of tell you how to do your job, but they don't know enough to actually know if that's the right thing to do or the best thing to do. So a lot of times, especially as a GA, like, a sport coach might have been there for 10 years. So they kind of have more credibility than you do, even though they're not a strength coach, because it's their program. and they've been doing it their way for 10 years, and you need to fit that. But at the same time, like, I think a lot of young coaches have a hard time kind of standing their ground and saying, like, I can't do it that way. This is how I do it. This is how I believe I'll be successful doing it, and trying to compromise. So yeah, I think those are big challenges that I mean, I've faced them. Everyone else I really know that's early in their coaching career talks about this, and I'd be curious to hear your guys' opinions on how you have handled situations like that, either well or handled them poorly, and any advice that you think would be helpful for people entering those kinds of situations.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. I was gonna say exactly what you said. Standing your ground, that's the biggest thing. Because when I was doing my GA, the head guy, Vic Brown at Ithaca College, he ran the show, and that's exactly what we needed as GAs. Because if there's a ton of conflict, like, he was gonna deal with it with the sport coaches, and I didn't have any issues with my coaches. But then it's a different story when I got more autonomy in my next position, and it is tough when you have a coach that's winning conference championships every year, and they're telling you, oh, well, our guy did it like this last year, 2 years ago, or whatever. And it is really tough to stand your ground, but you just absolutely have to. I mean, get your boss involved. You have to. But if you're at this stage in the game, you just have to say, listen, like, I know what I'm doing, and I cannot do it any other way. And I mean, if you believe that you can do it better, then either talk to my boss, or you can be your team strength coach, because I just cannot commit to what you're saying. What was the other one you said? The other issue you're dealing with?
So it's the sport coaches that think they know the right way, and it really just both revolved around that. Like, they want you to do things that other people did because they thought that was a good thing to do, or, you know, a lot of them say, this is what I did when I was in college and I thought it worked well, so why can't we do this?
Yeah.
And I mean, we like I've met a lot of sport coaches who have bachelor's or master's degrees in exercise science and who have a CSCS certification. So it just becomes a little bit of an interesting conflict to navigate around when, you know, they might have actually been the ones programming and they don't know that it wasn't very good, and you can't necessarily say that to them because, you know, you're trying to be respectful. But I think I agree with you. Like, the biggest thing is you need to be your own self, and you need to coach the way that you know how to, because if I took your job and I tried to run your program, I would suck at it. And then all of a sudden, thinks I'm not good at my job, but I'm really not running my own program because I'm doing something that someone else wants me to do instead of something that I know I can do very well.
Right. And there's no doubt about that you're not going to be able to perform your job at the level that you are capable of if you're not playing to your strengths and what you're good at. And everybody has different strengths. So if you come in and you're trying to run Christian's program the way that he does, you're not going to be as effective. You always want to play to your strengths. Now, I think the difficult part about that y'all are hitting on is whether it's, you know, passive communication or whether it's aggressive communication or whether it's assertive communication, you know. And I think a lot of times what people do is they go, I'm going to be passive. I'm just going to let it go. I'm not going to say anything about it. And then all of a sudden I'm going to unload everything and I'm going to freaking tell you how it is. And neither of those are very effective.
Yeah.
What's the most effective is, okay, right now I'm in control of my emotions. I'm in control of my breathing, control my body, right? And I can communicate my message like, hey, coach, look, this is what I'm really good at. I know that the coach before, he did things this way, but those aren't my strengths. Like, this is what I'm good at, and this is how I think I can best serve your athletes. And then you give that coach the opportunity to say, piss off, and like, this is what I think. But then at that point, it's on them. It's their choice. At least they know this is what I'm good at. This is how I can best serve your athletes. And now you're kind of putting that on them. But if you sit back and you do the passive, and then explode on them thing, then you're not doing anybody any good.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's gonna be your knee-jerk response too, because I know you get there and you're excited and it's going well with a couple coaches, then all of a sudden a sport coach lays something on you and you're like no, we need to do it this way, and you're just like okay, and then you go home and you're like, wait a minute, what did I agree to?
Yeah.
And then you let it go on too long, and then eventually you get to a point where you just explode. I've definitely had this experience before, and it's not fun. I really wish from the beginning I would have just said, you know what, like, I cannot do it this way. But
what would you tell incoming coaches who are going to be put in those situations? How do they communicate that assertively, and how do they do it in a way where they don't, hopefully ruin their position there?
I think number one is talk to your supervisor, boss, whatever, and make sure that they have your back. And if you're really concerned about a certain coach that you've heard things about, have them go over your program with you, tell them how you do things and how you want to run it. And that'll just bring your confidence up at the very least. And then going into any meetings with a sport coach, it's okay to lean on your boss when you're in your first position as an assistant, I think. And they already trust your boss. So if your boss relates to them that they trust you, I think it's going to be a lot smoother. But go in and present what you want to do. And if they have a problem with it, then you can explain why you do it. And if they still have a problem with it, then that's when you might say something like, yeah, talk to my boss, because this is how I'm going to do things and I can't waver from it. But I think the majority of sport coaches are pretty on board with most things people are going to do. There's that few that are not, but I think in general you're going to have pretty smooth sailing unless there is that one in 10 sport coach out there that's going to think they know everything. And yeah, like I said, the biggest thing for me was just making sure my boss is on board, just to reaffirm that I'm doing the right thing and they're going to have my back if it comes to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing to add onto that too is you need to kind of sit down and think and pick and choose your battles. Because sometimes people are going to want you to change something. And if you sit there and think about it and it's not really going to change the identity of your program and it's not that big of a deal and maybe they just don't like one exercise, you can get the same thing out of something else and you don't need to create some sort of confrontation because of it. And I think if you let yourself feed into that stuff too much, then when something actually matters to you, you're not going to have much ground to stand on because you're so nitpicky and you kind of let your ego get in the way too much instead of trying to like assist the coach and be one cohesive team where you're able to compromise and at least create some sort of like respect and understanding to where you both want the same thing, as opposed to you're just kind of both butting heads and trying to get your way and like assert your dominance, so to say, because you think this is my job, not yours. I want to do it my way. And even if that's true, there's sometimes where I think you need to just put your ego aside and make a compromise. And I think that goes a long way because it shows the coach that you trust them and you're willing to listen, and people won't listen to you unless you know that you'll listen to them, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. I actually have a list of things that I wrote them down. Like, it's like 4 or 5 things that I absolutely will not waver from in my programs, which is like volume, intensity at certain times of the year and things like that. But like, if they want to do a tricep overhead extension at the end of lift, I do not care at all. And I think if they want to throw that stuff in it, and they know their team the best, so if they think that's going to get the team to buy in, by all means, let them have some autonomy. But I think you just need to really sit down and make a list of the things that will harm the athletes if you are not in control of.
Mm.
Yeah. So I mean, one little like aspect I wanted to talk about that kind of feeds into this is leading up, down, and across. And we're kind of just talking about kind of leading up, but not so much. You could consider sport coaches across, but like down, we already talked about a lot. That's easy. Like the athletes, we understand that pretty well. But you have to be a leader in all directions. So I don't know, Chase, what are your thoughts on leading up, like directly, like to your boss? What are some ways that you can influence your supervisors in a positive way that they might not be seeing for themselves at the time?
I think the easiest thing is energy. Um, and it really, I mean, if you want to take it back a step, it's how do you show up every day? Like, what do people see when they look at you? How does the room, because a room changes with every single person who walks in. The atmosphere of that room, I see it every single day when I'm at the office. It's, you know, this group's here, and then one person walks in, it changes, and then another person walks in and it changes. Then a person walks out, and you see it in their body language, you see it in their energy. But how does the room change when you walk in? I mean, you have to really ask yourself that. When I walk in somewhere, how do people change around me? And are you somebody who is everybody just takes a breath and goes, thank God, like thank God, like now, like all right, let's do this thing, like we're good. You know what I mean? Do people feel that? And it does not matter if you're in a leadership role. You know, when you're talking about your supervisor, the way that you make them feel is still the way that you make them feel. It doesn't matter what position you're in. Now, that's not necessarily getting into like, am I going to confront you about something that I don't think you're doing well and all of that, or am I going to encourage you and all those things? But what kind of energy do you bring? Do you show up to, you were just talking about 6 a.m. lift. Do you show up to 6 a.m. lift like you've been thinking about it all night and you couldn't wait to get there? And are you bringing that type of energy? Are you bringing the type of energy where you're like, dude, like I just rolled out of bed. I've been going hard all week. Like they should understand that I'm drained right now. And that's the difference in the people that are good and the people that are great and that's why I've always loved seeing people in adverse situations, because anybody can perform well. Anybody can be a great teammate and encourage people and respond well to situations, like when you just hit a home run. Like, hey, I've been batting like 450. Like, hey man, like you're awesome. Like keep it up. All right, dude. Well, how about when you just struck out 3 times in a row this game and you got to show up to practice the next day and go to lift? Like, what is your attitude like then? Like, are you still showing up like, damn, I've been thinking about this all night, I'm ready to go? Or are you bringing that energy down? And I think that's the biggest way, in my opinion, that you can really influence those people who are in those leadership positions, your supervisors, because they are sitting there going, I'm this person's leader. Like I'm the one that's running the show, and this person's showing up like getting the job done. It doesn't matter what's going on. You know what I mean? So I think that energy is one of the most important things. Asking yourself the question, how do they feel when I walk in the room? Like, how do I change that weight room when I walk in? And that's a tough question to ask. That's a really tough question to ask. If you're real with yourself, because I'm not freaking perfect every day. When I walk in the office, man, sometimes I walk in there and I'm like, dude, I know that I'm not bringing what I need to be bringing. But you still have to sit with yourself and ask yourself that question if you really want to impact your team. So
You actually bring up a really interesting point. Something I've always thought about was, so you gave the example of you strike out 3 times and you can either get back on the horse so you can mope around. I've found that there's like this strange way of thinking that some people, they strike out 3 times and they're really not that upset, and they're ready to get back on the horse and encourage their team, but they also want to appear that they're upset with themselves so that their teammates might not think that they're content with a poor level of play. And I think it's just, no one really, I think if you're on a team, no one is thinking too much about you in that way. Like, no one's analyzing your thoughts during a game. And I think that people can really fall into that, oh, if I don't bust a bat over the bench, they might think that I'm okay with striking out all the time, which is such a strange way to think. But I mean, it happens, and I've fallen into it before. Like playing tennis, I hit a ball into the fence instead of into the court, and I freak out because I'm thinking like, man, that's not my best, and I hope they know that's not my best because I'm way better than that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've seen that at all, but I just think it's such an odd thought process that goes through people's heads.
Oh, definitely. I see it all the time, and a lot of times what in my situation, what you end up having to do is take somebody, like get somebody one-on-one, because they change when they're around people. And the reason for that being is because their attention, it's an attentional thing. Your attention is on the people who are watching you and their judgments and opinions of you, versus like, I just hit the ball into the fence. How am I going to change that? Like, what's my next move? Okay, take a breath. What's the next thing that I need to focus on? And instead, my focus is on, like, I just busted a bat because, I struck out, and I'm worried about what my teammates think about me. That's an attentional thing. And I don't mean like I need attention thing. It's an attentional miscue. You know what I mean? You're thinking about the wrong thing at the wrong time, and that's why you're losing control of your emotions and breaking a bat. Instead of thinking, let me control my breathing right now because I just struck out, and what did I do? How am I going to learn something from that AB that's going to help me be successful in the next AB? Okay, let's move on. I'm going to the field. I got to field a ground ball. You know what I mean? Like, what are you focusing on? Are you focusing on that? Or when you run out into the field, are you focusing on everybody that's in the stands and their opinions of you because you just struck out? Much easier said than done, especially once you get to a level where you got people yelling, screaming at you. Everybody's developing opinions of you all the time. You run into that issue a lot with athletes because there's so many people that are, I'm developing an opinion of you before you even make a play. I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, oh, this is probably how this person is. And they're worried about all these judgments that are going on instead of worrying about what is the task at hand? How do I perform? How do I keep control of my emotions? How do I control my breathing? It's that attentional shift that is the determining factor there.
Yeah, you really laid it out well, because it's just a thought in my head, and I like how you like actually designed how it's an attentional thing. So like, what's something you would say if you pull someone aside to refocus on, if you're pretty sure that's what's going on?
Breathing.
Start breathing.
Breathing is the number one way, because the first thing that you can do to control your physiology, there's a large school of thought that talks about that's your only way to kind of jump into the sympathetic versus parasympathetic nervous system and kind of bridge that gap, which is true to an extent. But what happens is you get in those situations and you get heightened. I've done a lot of work in this. You get so jacked up, you get emotionally high strung because you just struck out, or or you're in a big time before you strike out. You're in a big time situation. You're in a big at bat. You're in a big game, big play, and you get so heightened, your sympathetic nervous system is jacked up, heart rate goes up, breathing goes up. Now my attention starts to narrow. My attention starts to get small, and most of the time internal, and we get stuck in a small thought. Like, I'm thinking about what people are thinking about me in this AB. Instead of thinking external on the ball that I need to hit, I'm thinking about something small and internal in my head that's not related to my goal. And that's when you see people choke. Because normally we have a routine of where we switch from one attention to another. I'm thinking about the ball. I'm thinking about my stance. I'm thinking about my batting routine. I'm thinking about the pitches coming, ball, drive through. I'm thinking a certain attentional pattern, and that gets disrupted with some random thing that's not, it doesn't matter what it is. Somebody yells something in the crowd, and for some reason that gets stuck in my head, and then I'm thinking about that, and I'm not thinking about the ball, which is what I'm supposed to be thinking about right now. So it's that attentional narrowing that goes on, and you lose track of your routine. And the first thing you can do to take control of that is your breath. You breathe low down in your belly. I know you've heard of diaphragmatic breathing. I do a lot of stuff with that. I actually did that with a soldier today. But teaching people how to breathe properly, take control of your body, and then now I can redirect my focus to what it is. So the first thing I'm doing as a coach, to bring all that back around and say, the first thing I'm doing as a coach when I know that's happening, I'm pulling that athlete aside. I'm going, listen, take a breath, take a deep breath. All right, what do you see? Like, this is what's going on. All right, focus on this. And it's small, like, take a breath, eye on the ball. You know what I mean? If that's the next thing, what do they need to focus on right now? Like, okay, they just struck out. They're pissed off. They're coming over to me. I'm saying, hey, look, take a deep breath. Okay. Leather to the ground. Like, whatever my coaching point is, like, I don't know what you're teaching, but I know, like, for instance, I don't know why I'm on a baseball thing right now, but when when I was a catcher and you went to block, because I was a catcher, it was always leather before plastic, leather before plastic. You want your glove to hit the ground before, your shin guards to hit the ground. So you tell them that cue, take a deep breath, leather before plastic. Like, you want them to know, what do I need to focus on? Take a breath, focus on this. Take a breath, focus on this. And too many times as coaches, and I know y'all know this, a coach gets their athlete, or they get, their group of athletes, their team together, and they just go, yeah. And you can see them, like, on TV, you just see them, they're just, and they get done, and then all their athletes are running out, like, what the heck is going on? Like, they don't know what they're about to do. Athletes need to be told what to do simply, like something that they have heard before. Like, what do you tell, like, give me an example of something that you tell your athletes all the time, like a simple, just, what do you tell them to do, like, on an exercise?
On a squat, sit back like you're sitting in a chair.
Sit in a chair. Like, hey, look, I don't know what this person's focusing. They're focusing on something, all this bullcrap. Hey, look at me. Take a breath. Look, sit back on it. Sit back in a chair. Like, you just tell them what it is that they need to do, short and simple. Go do it. Go do it. Sit in a chair. Sit in a chair. Or it's, whatever it is. I know one thing that whenever I was a receiver, my coach always said, violent hands. Because, as a receiver, you got to get people's hands off. If people get their hands on you, you can't get open. So violent hands. So I can't tell you how many times I heard violent hands, and that is what I said in my head, and then I went and did it. I guess I know I keep going. I keep going here, but it takes me to another thought. Another reason why that is so important is having those small cues, like violent hands, sit in a chair, leather before plastic, whatever it is. using those is so important because there's y'all have heard of the law of attraction, like a really popular concept that came out with the book The Secret, and like all kinds of people preach about the law of attraction, all this stuff. Whatever you put out into the universe comes back to you, all these things. It's really a simple psychological concept, the principle of dominant thought. Whatever you think about the most is what you move towards. It was funny because I literally did this morning. I had a black G-Shock watch on, and I took it off, and I was going to put this watch on. And so I had the G-Shock black watch in my right hand, and I went to my drawer because I had to get my belt, and I went to go open the drawer, and I was thinking, I had my watch in my hand, and I'm thinking, belt, I got to get the belt. Like, I'm thinking belt is in the drawer, and I went to go open the drawer, and I just threw my watch in and shut it. And so like it didn't make any sense. And I don't know if you've ever done anything like that before, where you're just like thinking something, and you're thinking something, and then you did something that totally didn't make sense. Like, I don't know, throwing clothes in the refrigerator or something. I don't know if you do that.
Yeah.
I do that all the time.
Clothes in the refrigerator. There's just a bunch of dirty clothes in there. Yeah. But it's because my dominant thought was belt is in the drawer. So I'm moving towards the drawer, even though I'm also like, I'm got this watch in my hand. So I just put the watch in the drawer. The whole point being that you move towards what you're thinking about the most. Whatever you think about and you envision, you will move towards that. So if you've been doing, if you do a squat, and I say as a strength coach, and you say, sit back in a chair, and you do that squat, good. Sit back in a chair, good. And they get used to that. They get used to sit back in a chair, and I know exactly what movement I do. You say sit back in a chair, I do this movement pattern. So now when you direct my focus to that, when I'm sitting there and I'm getting ready to go into the lift, and you put that dominant thought in my head, sit back in a chair, I'm like, that's all that just went into my head. Sit back in a chair, sit back in a chair. So I'm just doing that move. I'm not even thinking. And you don't want your athletes to think. You just want them to go do what you have trained them to do. Sit back in a chair, boom, I do a perfect squat. So it's that, putting that thought in their head that's short, simple, and directs their focus to what they need to be focused on at the moment to perform.
All right, so I don't want to get like too onto this kind of stuff. It's so interesting, but I do want to get back to the bigger picture stuff. But I just have two questions I got to ask before. Okay. So on all the way back into the baseball stuff, of course. So you're talking about baseball, like short and concise. I mean, it's pretty much the same thing we've just talked about, but short and concise, and just like repeating that over and over. So my first question would be, what do you do about someone who complains that they get too focused on that task? Like they're up to bat and they're just thinking the words in their head, like hit eye on the ball, eye on the ball, eye on the ball, eye on the ball, and it actually distracts them. And then after you answer that, my second question is there a point where if you use that cue too much, they become desensitized to it, and then it doesn't work like it should? And I mean, like, do you have to change your cues up in an athletic field is kind of what I'm asking.
No, I wouldn't. I would not, because the whole point is that you're trying to, it's not you saying it that is what is making that athlete perform the way that they perform. No external thing drives behavior. What drives behavior is what you think, your thought that drives your emotions and reactions. So it's really you saying sit back in a chair, and the athlete says sit back in a chair to themselves, and then they perform an action. So what you're trying to teach the athlete is that there is a routine for the way that they talk to themselves before they perform. And you can help prime that performance by putting that into their head before they go do it. And that is the biggest issue that I was saying with coaches running their mouths so much. There's no reason for that, because all you want the athlete to do is do what you've trained them to do. There's no need for you to keep talking. All that needs to happen is you to get them in the state that they need to be in, like how high, how low do they need to be, like get them calm or as excited as they need to be, and to tell them what to do. Violent hands, see the field. You know what I mean? Like because all they're going to do is go out there and say violent hands, see the field, and then they're going to do what they've been trained to do. They're not going to sit there and go, coach said, watch the safety. If he backs up, then you go to the weak side, and then we roll, and then you got to do that. And then the person in the stands, don't think about the person in the stands. Make sure you don't think about your mom or this. Like, make sure you get water before and after the play. Like, nobody cares. Like, the athlete is not going to do that. And if they do that, and they are thinking about all those things, they're not going to perform well.
Yeah.
So there's no need for you to put all that stuff in their head. The other thing about the overthinking, I think that's not a thing. If your athlete is saying that they are thinking too much about what they need to be focusing on, that's not the problem. That's exactly what you want. You want them to be thinking about and focusing on what they need, like that cue, like hit the ball or ball or whatever they need. If they're saying something to themselves that's not actually what they need to be focused on, that may be the problem. If they're saying, release point, but they really need to be focused on the spin, then that could be a problem, because they're actually cueing themselves to something that is not the primary cue for them to excel at the skill. So you should definitely check and make sure that what their cue is, or what they keep telling themselves to focus on, is most suitable for them to perform that skill. However, most likely what the problem is that person gets to ruminating and thinking about other things, because they're like, their thought process is moving so quickly, and then they start to get heightened. They start to get nervous, and their sympathetic nervous system starts getting jacked up. Heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes up. And again, I know I was just talking about this earlier, but if I could teach any athlete, any performer one skill, it's how to control your breathing properly, because when you control your breathing, you control your body. And when I know that I'm in control of my body, my confidence skyrockets. I'm in control of my own body, because we know that that's the only thing we're in control of. My body, my mind, my thoughts, my expectations, and my focus. Like me, that's what I'm in control of. I'm not in control of anybody else. So when I start thinking about all those things and trying to control all those things, my confidence goes down, because I start worrying about what this person's going to say about me. I start worrying about what if this player does this, and what if they say that, and none of that is going to help me perform. Knowing that I'm in control of my body, my confidence goes up. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I was thinking, like, in terms of the inverted U hypothesis, like level of arousal, you get to the point where like that cue is working for you, and then you might get to the peak and you start overanalyzing it. And this is what you said about how then your nervous system starts getting jacked up and you go down the other end. So I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So, but just quick thing, and then you can switch topics. But my point on that was to say that that's not an attention issue. The inverted U is about arousal. So that's about controlling your body. Your heart rate goes up, like your muscle tension increases. And once you know how to control your body, like that's how you bring yourself down or move yourself up on that, on that scale, on that inverted U. And so that's likely the problem. It's that athlete getting too far, and then you kind of go over the edge, but that's not an intentional thing.
All right. We're good now. We're good on the.
Yeah, that makes sense.
the details. So I just wanted to get into Ryan. Actually, how much time do we have?
We have a little under 7 minutes left, so we might have time for like one quick hitter, and then that's really it.
All right. I can't choose, so we're gonna try to get them both in quick. So
Okay.
the first one I want to do is earning respect, or let's say you lost it for whatever reason. We're all human. We make mistakes. How do we regain respect and trust in an athletic setting?
Yeah. I think that, do you mean from a player's perspective or a coach's perspective?
From a coach's perspective, losing the trust, or when they're first coming in, it kind of leads back to laying the groundwork for your culture. But like earning the respect of your players. Let's say they've had the same strength coach for the last 10 years, and now you're coming in. Like, I've found that freshmen are a lot easier to win over because they don't have a bias already. So how do you gain that respect from the senior players that have had the same person for the past 10 years and you're just coming in fresh?
Extreme ownership, I think, is the big thing. Owning who you are, knowing who you are, that's probably even a bigger thing. Knowing who you are, knowing in this job, I've realized so much about you have to know yourself, because I get challenged just every day, and owning who you are, owning your mistakes that you make, because that is what people respect and that is what people trust. And because everybody knows that you screw up, everybody knows that you don't know everything, and having some level of vulnerability with your players is an important thing for you to be able to build trust, and for you to build a connection, like you were saying as well, with that kind of being a bigger part, especially as a strength coach. You can get tied up in the numbers of it. But I would say that extreme ownership, like if you screw up, call yourself out. Like, it is what it is, and this is what I'm going to do to keep moving forward, and that's fine. You know what I mean? And people respect that. People know that you screw up, and if you're just going to hide and deny it, then that's not really going to take you very far personally, because you can't move forward until you don't own up to your own shit. But also as far as your players' respect goes.
Makes sense. Anything to add, Ryan?
No, I mean, I think you're 100% spot on. I think sometimes it's a little easier said than done, until you've actually tried to do that and you realize that they respect it. Like, that's definitely a scary thing to think about at first. But every time I've done something stupid or whatever, you come out better on the other side if you just own up to it and admit it, and you, like you said, just take ownership of it instead of try to deny or maybe pretend it didn't happen, because nothing changes if you do that. You got to take control of the situation. So
Yeah, you hit it right there. I think the biggest thing we get into is, like, the athletes might not understand the physiology behind things, and if we accidentally throw in an extra set that crushes them, you think to yourself, oh, they might not know. But I mean, even if they don't know, that's not really the point, because they will, like, if they had no idea, okay, maybe you're flatlining. But if they had no idea and you let them know that you screwed up and that you're going to do better, or whatever you say, just owning up to it, I think that can really increase your respect in that point. So, like, you can absolutely coast and you might just have a neutral relationship with everybody, but that's not really what you're trying to accomplish. All right. I don't think we have enough time to really hit this topic too hard. So let's just go back. Chase, what would you say are the biggest variables to a winning culture? And feel free to just, like, relive the stuff we talked about today with with laying the groundwork in a culture. So just like what are your key variables there?
Key variables. Yeah, I'm gonna tell you, you can't win without people who love to compete. Like, I think that maybe I'm, you know, crazy to say that or whatever, but I just don't think that you are going to be able to keep up with other cultures that are highly competitive. I was proud to be a part of teams that, like, it did not matter. We could be playing ping pong, we could be freaking playing pool. It literally did not matter what we were doing. People wanted to win, and they wanted to win badly. Like, they wanted to win badly every single time. And I think when you develop a culture of people who really want to win, as well as have a strong connection with each other, because that can get cutthroat. It can get, to where it's all about me still. So as long as we're still directed towards the team goals and where the team wants to go, and we're highly competitive, that's what it takes to have a championship group. People who want to win no matter what and are willing to sacrifice for the team's goals.
Yeah, want to win no matter what for the team. That's a dangerous combo right there.
Oh,
Yeah.
You don't – other factors play in, but that is one dangerous combo right there. Good point. Really good point.
That's a
All right.
perfect point to end it.
Yeah. You guys got anything else?
No, I mean, I thought this was really awesome. Thanks for coming on. There's so much more we could dive into. We might have to have you on for another one, because this is fascinating, and I think people can get a lot more out of this than most things that are put out on the internet. So we should try to do this again if we can. But thanks, man. This is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hop back on with y'all. And I think I just wanted to point out that I think this is a great way to reach people and a great way to communicate a message. So I love the fact that y'all are doing it. And other than that, just get up with me and we'll get to cracking at it again. But I love it. Yeah,
man. I was thinking through the whole thing, we might have to have you on as a permanent member just to have that sports aspect at all times. That's so helpful. I mean, anything we say, like if we bring a sports scientist on, if we bring an AT on, if we bring a sport coach on, you're gonna have input on it no matter what. So don't be surprised if we send you a contract to sign.
Yeah, I'll have to think about it. But man, I love doing this stuff, dude. I really do love it, because hopefully, whether or not people are out there that are gonna take away from it, like that's great too. But just getting to share ideas is something big that I think people don't do enough. So
absolutely. All right, guys. Good stuff.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks again.
Thank you.